Okay. So thank you all for joining us. This is the question and answer technical assistance call for Act 189 of 2018, the CTE Innovation Pilot Project. This is Jay Ramsey. I'm the State Director for Career Technical Education here at the Agency of Education. And Heather Boucher, who just stepped out, will be back in 1 second. And we're going to be working together to answer, to provide some context and provide answers to questions that were submitted in advance. There will be an open period for questions at the end of the presentation. Some of those questions we might not be able to answer when we're on the phone, but we will record the question and provide the answers after the call. The questions have been compiled and the answers have been written in advance. The questions and answers will be provided in writing after the call. To review, and Heather just stepped back in the room. To review the agenda for this call, we're going to provide the general context, purpose, and intent of Act 189 and review the broad timeline for the project. We'll spend 25 minutes reviewing questions and answers. We have 15 minutes for open floor from about 11:05 to 11:20. And at the end of the call, we're going to review the specific steps in the timeline and talk a little bit about our internal review process. We plan on wrapping the call up by 11:30. So the context. There's been a lot of legislative activity governing education in the last several years, starting in 2013 with Act 77, that's commonly known as the Flexible Pathways Law. In 2014, the federal government updated the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. In 2015, the federal government passed the Every Student Succeeds Act, and Vermont is in the process of implementing a state plan for that. Also in 2015, the General Assembly passed Act 51, which had a lot of interest in career technical education. 2 years later, the legislature passed Act 69, which was about workforce development. That is commonly referred to as S-135. There were several study committees from the Workforce Development Board. One of the committees was studying career technical education, funding, governance, and other issues related to CTE. Those recommendations led to Act 189 of 2018, which is about economic development. There are some specific things to CTE in there. Also in 2018, the legislature passed Act 173, which has to do with enhancing the effectiveness, availability, and equity of services provided to students who require additional support. Finally on the list is the federal government in 2018 enacted the Strengthening Career and Technical Education Act, also known as Perkins 5, which will lead to a state plan. So there's been a lot of activity and interest in career technical education, and we encourage everyone to consider these as part of the context for the proposals. I'm going to pull out some specific mentions in Act 189, the specific to career readiness via career technical education. The legislature is looking for middle school and technical center collaboration. The Act creates the pilot projects that we're talking about today that are formulated in local communities to study funding, governance, or both. The law addresses pre-tech or introductory CTE courses for 9th and 10th graders. The law defines career pathways for the state, and the law identifies technical assistance that the Agency of Education is to provide in a number of areas. For those that don't know, the definition of career pathways that we have now expands the federal definition that's found in the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act. It means a combination of rigorous and high-quality educational training and other experiences and services beginning not later than 7th grade that does 8 things. Integrates academic and technical skills. Developed in partnership with business and industry and aligns with the skill needs of industries in the local, regional, and state economies. If everyone could mute their call, that would help, I think. The third item is that it prepares individuals to transition seamlessly from secondary to post-secondary in adult technical education. It includes career counseling and work-based learning experiences. It includes, as appropriate, education offered concurrently with workforce preparation activities. It organizes educational training and other experiences. It enables an individual to gain a secondary school diploma or its recognized equivalent. And it prepares an individual to enter or to advance within a specific occupation or occupational cluster. We have some graphics that describe what a career pathway must do and what it looks like from a technical standpoint. We have also a career pathways coordinator on staff who's working to develop programs of study at the state level that will be adopted by regional centers that require mapping of the curriculum back to 7th grade and beyond high school. So I provide all this information because, again, it's context. Everything that we would be looking for in proposals have to consider these contexts and the particular pushes and pulls of the different legislations that are out there. Because there's been a lot of activity regarding career technical education, the agency believed it was important to develop a strategic vision and goals for CTE. Over the last year, we developed this in collaboration with a number of partners around the state. So the vision for career technical education is that all Vermont learners attain their post-secondary goals by having access to career and technical education systems that are equitable, efficient, integrated, and collaborative. And we achieve those goals by doing 5 things. Supporting only high-quality, rigorous, aligned CTE career pathway programs, by engaging industry as a full partner in the creation, validation, and maintenance of CTE programs, by developing and implementing career advisement systems that support career exploration and that allow all learners to be successful in pathways of interest, that we will work to improve the public perception of CTE, and we think the final goal is really important to this process for Act 189 pilots, but supporting collaboration among systems and promoting coordination between systems as a means of ensuring equity and of providing students with a high-quality experience. So this is a work in progress with the vision and goals, but as we identified in the RFP, it's important for you to consider those goals in writing your proposals. So I'm going to move into the question and answer section, the questions that were submitted in advance. There were 10 questions. If you have your RFP in front of you, some of the questions reference particular pages in the RFP. So the first question.
Written copy of this in front of us?
I
have a question about whether you have the written copy of this.
Yeah, some of them may.
Okay.
We can send it out when we send this again.
Great.
Question 1. On page 4, at the end of the first bullet, one of the suggestions for the pilot is to provide, quote, centralized offering of advanced courses. Is this a description of adult education or regular education partnered with post-secondary? And our answer, the suggestion of centralized offering of advanced courses was intended to address potential equity issues where small schools in each region of the state may not be able to offer the breadth and depth of advanced courses that other larger high schools do. You may have heard Governor Scott's inaugural address yesterday. He mentioned a similar issue in his address. The Every Student Succeeds Act identifies advanced coursework as including advanced placement, international baccalaureate, dual and concurrent enrollment, and early college high schools. This definition could be expanded to include adult technical education. It could be expanded to include the connections via dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment to post-secondary. Pilot projects could consider addressing advanced offerings within the CTE Center in service to the region. Question 2. Are there specific statutes, rules, or other existing requirements that would require state waivers? Is there any guidance as to where we would be looking that are not obvious to regular educators? And our answers for question 2. Proposals are limited to existing state statutes and State Board of Education policies. Proposals should examine existing statutes and State Board of Education policies that regional communities identify as limiting student access to CTE or that serve to limit delivery of educational experiences to both high school students and CTE students. And we reference specifically Title 16, and short of going through every single chapter of Title 16, Chapter 37 applies to career technical education. We're going to provide an index to you for the different sections that may be relevant. We would also point out that the State Board of Education Rules 2370 through 2398 provide further standards for CTE. Additionally, Rule Series 2200, also known as the Education Quality Standards, also apply to CTE centers. So, short of us going through and pinpointing specific laws, we are looking for the pilot projects to reference the laws that they feel like are blocking or preventing more students from accessing CTE. In the answer, we also provide a reference to U.S. Department of Education research that was conducted in 2013 on how other states fund CTE. We will distribute that information when we distribute the answers, and that could provide some additional strategies for you to examine. And someone is, we can hear you typing. I hope you're taking good notes. If you could mute. Thank you. Question 3, our main focus is on the change of funding for CTE. As a pilot that begins in April of this year, our taxpayers will have already voted on the 2020 budget. What does that mean for an entirely different funding process? And that did not work the way that I wanted it to. Just 1 second. So the answer to the third question, the purpose of the funds associated with proposals that are selected is to support the further development and implementation of your proposed idea. Those proposals that are selected to be implemented have the spring, summer, and fall of 2019 to develop new budgets for taxpayers to vote on in spring 2020, with full implementation and study in the 2020 to 2021 school year. Question 4, can there be more than one project within a grant? Answer 4, there is no limit on the number of projects within a proposal. However, we will be evaluating proposals based on the feasibility of their implementation. Question 5, can one technical center submit 2 separate grants due to working with other schools? The answer is no. There are a maximum of 4 projects that can be authorized. One technical center may only submit 1 proposal, which could incorporate multiple projects. Question 6, will there be subsequent funding after the study to support implementation and sustainability? Answer, Without knowing the intent of the question, we want to remind potential applicants that the purpose of this opportunity is to have applicants propose solutions that enhance the implementation and sustainability of career technical education in Vermont. The state remains committed to supporting the career technical education system in the state. Question 7. Is transportation an allowable expense? Answer. No, new funds available under this project cannot be used for transportation. If transportation is a barrier, we encourage applicants to propose creative approaches using existing transportation funds. Question 8. Is it an even amount of funds over 2 years, or can the budget be front-loaded? Answer. It is an even amount over the 2 years. Question 9. Is anyone else grappling with supervision and evaluation between districts if staff is shared? And the answer. The proposal should aim to address the issues that interfere with the efficiency of the education systems or that prevent effective coordination and collaboration of the systems. We encourage you to access the Professional Learning Network, PLN, of Vermont, and the available networking and professional development opportunities that can connect you with schools sharing similar problems. Question 10. Can funds be used for curriculum stipends? Answer. The purpose of these funds are to support implementation of an approved plan. Paying stipends for work identified in an approved plan is permissible. So that is the end of the submitted question and answers. So what I want to do is reference the RFP, the goals. The agency identified 3 goals: to increase student access to CTE as a learning experience and strategy, not as a place. The second goal is viable and sustainable alternatives for funding career technical education. And the third goal is viable and sustainable alternatives or an increase in public will for alternative governance structures. So now we have open floor time for questions. Does anyone have any further questions? Okay, I am not hearing any questions.
Are folks just thinking? Or are there really no additional questions?
Or are you on mute?
We need some think time.
Okay.
Can we reserve some time for at the end, maybe?
Yeah, so you think I'll go through the rest of the slides and then I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
And you don't necessarily have to listen to me with the rest of this because I'm recording it. So I'll put that out there.
We're hanging on every word down here in Springfield, Jay. So.
I can tell. So just to talk a little bit about what happens next.
Mm-hmm.
So the due date for proposals is 5 p.m. on February 15th. So between February 15th and March, and the end of February, it's a short month, we will be convening our internal review committee, which is made up of members of the Student Pathways Division, the team leaders there. And so the committee is Heather Boucher, Deputy Secretary, myself as the Assistant Director of the Student Pathways Division, Jess DeCarolis, the Director of the Student Pathways Division, Robin Castle, the State Director for Adult Education and Literacy, and Veronica Newton, the Education Program Manager and for the Personalization Team and our Work-Based Learning Coordinator. The applications are going to be reviewed for completeness. Elements are identified on page 4 of the RFP. And The elements are a narrative that's no more than 10 pages in length and asking you to be as specific as possible, with a brief description of the problem and how it will be addressed by the project, and including the specific statutes, rules, or other requirements that may require waivers or review by the legal team. A detailed theory of action, listing the project lead and key partners, and specific indicators or benchmarks that will be used for evaluating project success. The second element is a letter of support from at least one high school, a school board, or RAB endorsing the plan. The third element is a detailed timeline for year 1 of the project. And item 4 is a total project budget with a detailed narrative for the first year of the project, provided on the template that we've attached to the RFP. And if the project is selected, we would ask for a more detailed narrative for year 2.
Later on.
Okay.
Yes.
The list of detailed actions, benchmarks, partners, letter of support, is that included in the 10-page narrative, or is that beyond that?
I think
4 is separate.
Well, 2 through 4 are separate, but the list that is after number 1, I think it's in addition to.
Okay.
I mean, they're going to be a part of the narrative, but we want to make sure you have enough narrative space to tell us what you're going to do. Identifying the partners and all those things are. Okay, all right. So I stand corrected. A through E should be part of the 10 pages. Part of the 10 pages.
I think that's the way it's written, with A through E as subcategories.
Yeah. Okay.
But Sherry, I think, if you see a problem with that, we'd be open to hearing that.
Yep.
Right now.
I don't yet.
Okay. Wait, can I just add a little? This is Heather Boucher. We realize that resources are strapped in terms of time, in terms of capacity at the local level. So we're trying to balance having a pretty thorough application from the field, but also not trying to require some kind of 50-page application for the pilot. So we're trying to strike a balance, and I think we'd be okay to actually saying something like 10 to 15 pages. Like I think that would be, if that sounds like a more reasonable approach and helps people feel more comfortable about the application, I don't think that we'd have a problem with that. If anything, I think our assurance was, don't feel compelled to write a 30-page proposal for this. So if you need a little more space, I think that's fine.
Yeah.
Hopefully that clarifies, at least from our perspective, where those guidelines were coming from.
Thanks.
So,
but one other thing, but having said that, we do want to keep it fair. So, if it would, it might make sense for us then to actually just make a decision to say 10 to 15 pages, because that would actually give the flexibility. And then it doesn't mean that, it means everyone has the same sort of quote unquote directions and flexibility. Any concerns on the call about that?
Scott down at River Valley. I think that the things that come to mind for me is 10 to 15 pages, sure. Is that just some of the rewrite of the statutes and all that piece will chew up a good portion of that, or the statute, not that I want to write more pages, but is it inclusive of all the Green Book and the State Board rule changes for that whole thing, or those additions to like appendices?
You could do appendices, Scott. That's a great question. I also don't think we anticipated that you would be rewriting the statute, just citing the actual number and what the statute is. Yeah. You might, for instance, pull out a phrase or a few phrases, but we're not anticipating that you would actually have to rewrite the entire piece of the statute in your proposal. That's an excellent question. I think that would be fine if you felt comfortable putting that in an appendix or an additional attachment.
Mm-hmm.
But it shouldn't, that wouldn't count towards your narrative, no.
Yeah, I was looking at Amazon Education Law for Dummies, and I didn't see that book available. So thank you very much.
Can I get a copy if you do find it?
They write version after version, so they never really allow to get to one version that even gets to press.
Good point.
I think if you can be detailed in your narrative with this is the existing law and describe what the problem is that you've identified and what your potential solution is, short of providing some very specific legal language. We have an obligation to make sure we're not allowing the Wild West. So we want to know what it is that what the problem is and what you're proposing to solve, and then that at some point in the project might lead to developing language, but we wouldn't ask you to develop the language.
No, that's actually a good clarification.
So the rest of the process for reviewing the pilots, the review committee will review them on their own. We're going to meet to select, and ties will be broken by the deputy secretary. We will be having the legal and school finance team review the finalists. And then at the end, whichever project is, whether you're selected or not, Heather or I will provide feedback to you about what our thoughts were about the project.
Can I just clarify a little bit on that? So in terms of the legal and school finance teams reviewing the finalists, that's more of a cursory just to make sure that we have our ducks in a row as an agency. I don't think they're going, the selection is really led by the programmatic elements of the agency. This isn't an opportunity for legal and school finance to kind of put the kibosh on a proposal. It would be more about these are the finalists that are anticipated to be selected. What are any legal or fiscal issues that we need to make sure we get clearance for from agency leadership? If anyone had a question about that, I don't want it to come across as though they're kind of the backstop. That's not the process. They won't know enough about the issues necessarily to make that call.
Scott down at River Valley, I asked this one of Jay, and I think it's for the benefit of the group, that one of the questions I asked when Jay presented to our board and some of the regional superintendents was, if we propose a different or novel funding approach, will we be able to exercise that approach to see data during year 2, probably, as long as the people on the next floor up from you guys give it the thumbs up, correct or not correct?
Correct. Yes, that's the whole point, that you would be using this first year to plan, come up with a concrete idea, second year to implement.
Okay.
Yep, and so that's exactly what the legal and finance need to do to figure out like how we would allow that to happen for you at the local level.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Was someone else talking and asking a question?
I think it was an echo. Does anyone else have any thoughts about the open floor time? Any additional questions?
Because I'm ultra competitive, who else is on the call? I hear Sherry. Anybody else? Because maybe we already won if there's only 2 of us.
Gong!
Nice try, Scott.
Oh. So it sounds like Bob Travers
I'm
Slipped
proud
in
of myself.
unnoticed.
I just unmuted my speaker.
Yeah, unmute to talk trash. Perfect.
We all
So
play our role.
while you're still thinking, the timeline
Feedback.
feedback.
It's really important to me.
What?
Sorry, this is Heather.
Sorry.
As part of the review process, particularly if, well, in all cases, there will be significant feedback provided to the applicants. I think that's actually fair. This is obviously a new kind of model that we're trying to run with, and we're very appreciative of folks who are willing to participate and think outside the box with us.
Yeah.
And so I think it's fair that the review committee gives you some pretty detailed feedback, whether the application is successful or not, to actually just, I think that's fair in terms of you put a lot of effort into this, and it's fair to get some feedback from the selection committee on that. I think that's mirroring what's typically done, for instance, when we submit grants to the federal government. So hopefully that is appealing to those of you on the call. If for some reason you do not want feedback, I guess let us know in your application, but it's meant to be important information in terms of, using the objective ideas or the objective tools. All proposals have strengths and limitations, and so it would be framed around that piece.
Yep. Thank you.
Jay, I have a question.
Okay.
I've already met with a school district who was floating an idea, and I was assuming that they might have submitted questions, but I don't see them as an invite on this conference call. Was Milton on the call?
They submitted questions. They're not on the call. I didn't have everyone's. I wasn't sure who everyone on the on your teams were going to be, so I only sent the call-in information to the tech center directors to redistribute. But I am recording it, and I'm going to make it available on our website, and I'll distribute it by email if the file's not too big.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. So the timeline, just to recap, February 15th is the deadline, 5 p.m. Those proposals need to be sent to Barbie Pignoni. She has a new last name. I will send everyone the new email address. She has a different email address. And if you happen to copy me when you send them, that's okay too. March 1st, we intend to announce the selections. We intend for your projects to begin April 1st. On October 15th, we would be looking for a 6-month status report. And that's something that we can figure out with the pilot project, what the status report looks like. It might be different for each project. The goal of that report is to inform a report that we have to provide to the legislature by January 15th of 2020. On April 15 in 2020, there would be another 6-month status report. October 15th, 2020, 6-month status report, and then April 1st, 2021 is when the final report would be due. I think it's worth us talking about the timing. So the legislature passed the Act 189 in July, and the governor signed it. And so the law says that these are 2-year projects. So we are probably contemplating in January of 2020 presenting that information to the legislature.
Right, but the funding would go.
Yeah.
Would be consistent with a 2-year calendar timeframe, like typical funding is.
Sure.
So you would in fact have truly 2 years from April 1st to actually complete the work. I think what Jay's saying is we will, just given the nature of, the General Assembly is very interested in the work that successful applicants will be doing, and we're going to want, I think all of us are going to want to actually get some information back to them on the success and the challenges that are happening. But I'm assuring that you will not have a stunted implementation period for this or funding period, that it truly will be 2 years from the start of the award.
I'm also thinking about stuff that was not in the RFP, but it's the support structures that we'll have to consider internally here, that when a project is approved, I'm imagining that there's some amount of technical assistance that would be provided from me or other members of the Agency of Education. And so it's, I don't imagine that we're going to approve a project and then let you set sail and come back to port in 6 months. I think there's an interest on our part to be involved and support your projects as best we can. And that's sort of we'll determine that after the projects are identified. So
I would just add as well, at the same time, I don't think the lens from our perspective is to meddle or to overexert, control. I mean, the whole purpose of this is to give you a sandbox where you can actually relax some of these current restrictions and really work on some of these thorny issues together to actually inform the rest of the state. So we're here. I think what Jay's saying is we're here certainly to help and to provide technical assistance, but on this one, we're not here to, quite frankly, strongly monitor or have a heavy hand in actually what you're doing once we actually secure the potential waivers you need and the loosening of current restrictions, if that is applicable to your proposal. I should note, you don't have to actually have statute or rules that you're addressing. That's not a requirement. It just depends on what the particular issue is that each application wants to focus, or set of issues each application wants to focus on.
So I'll just give one last opening for questions. I don't have any more prepared presentation materials for you. If you do think of a question after we hang up, which is likely, you can send it to me. We will answer it and distribute it along with the already prepared questions and answers.
Yeah, we'll add it to those frequently asked questions. We'll kind of do a document like that. Mm-hmm.
And I would just ask that those questions not, let's give a deadline of Wednesday morning next week so that I can prepare the final question and answer documentation to send it out. Okay, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you all very much for making time in your day to listen to us talk about this, and thank you for your interest in the pilot project process. I hope you all have some really great ideas that you just need to put down on paper, and I'm really looking forward to reading the proposals and trying to get us headed off in a new direction. So thank you all, and I'm going to end